You have been feeling something shift inside you, and you have been ignoring it. Perhaps you told yourself it was stress, or age, or simply the weight of life accumulating. But the truth is far more significant than that. What you are experiencing is not a breakdown of who you are. It is the emergence of who you have always been beneath the survival mechanisms you learned to trust. Most people spend their entire lives mistaking heightened awareness for instability, emotional depth for weakness, and the call toward meaning for confusion. Today, I will show you exactly what is happening in your body and mind, why it is happening now, and how to stabilize this transformation before it destabilizes you. I am Monk Jin, and today we speak of something that has likely been stirring within you for some time. Perhaps you have noticed it quietly, in moments when the world grows still. A shift, not dramatic, not sudden, but persistent. You feel emotions more deeply than you once did. Small injustices trouble you. Beauty moves you in ways it did not before. And beneath the surface of your daily routine, there is a pull towards something you cannot yet name. Meaning, purpose, truth. Many dismiss these sensations as stress or the natural consequence of aging. But I tell you this with certainty. What you are experiencing is not weakness. It is not confusion. It is the emergence of a deeper awareness that has been waiting within you, sometimes for decades, to finally rise. Your body is responding to an internal recalibration. Your mind is beginning to perceive reality through a lens that transcends the survival mechanisms you have relied upon for most of your life. This is not fantasy. This is the foundation of what many call the fifth dimension, not a place in the stars, but a state of being rooted in unity, coherence, and emotional intelligence. And if you have felt this stirring, then you are already standing at the threshold of profound transformation. The question is not whether this is happening to you. The question is, are you ready to understand it? The term fifth dimension has been distorted by misunderstanding and metaphor. Let me clarify what it truly represents. It is not a physical location. It is not a realm you ascend to after meditating for 10,000 hours. It is a state of consciousness characterized by unity, awareness, emotional coherence, and the significant reduction of ego-driven perception. In this state, you begin to experience life not as a series of isolated events happening to a separate self, but as an interconnected flow in which you are both participant and witness. Most people struggle to articulate this shift because modern language lacks the psychological vocabulary to describe it accurately. We speak of anxiety, depression, and stress with clinical precision, yet we have no equivalent terms for the dissolution of separateness or the stabilization of heart-centered awareness. This creates confusion. When empathy intensifies, when conflict feels draining, when intuition becomes louder than thought, many interpret these experiences as symptoms of instability rather than signs of growth. But these are not random occurrences. They are markers of a structured transformation in how your nervous system processes reality. They indicate that your identity is expanding beyond the boundaries of survival thinking. This is the essence of the fifth dimension, and once you understand this, every sensation you have been feeling begins to make sense. You may be wondering why this shift is occurring now, at this particular stage of your life. The answer lies in the intersection of time, experience, and biological readiness. By the time you reach midlife, you have accumulated decades of emotional memory. You have witnessed relationships rise and fall, You have pursued goals that once seemed vital, only to discover they left you feeling hollow. You have endured loss, disappointment, and the slow erosion of certainties you once held sacred. All of this creates the conditions necessary for deeper awareness to emerge. Your nervous system, after years of managing stress through suppression and hypervigilance, begins to seek a different mode of operation. It grows weary of constant threat detection. It craves coherence. At the same time, your identity, which was once shaped by external validation and survival needs, starts to loosen its grip. You begin questioning the roles you have been playing. You feel less attachment to outcomes. This is not depression. This is recalibration. The confusion you feel is not a sign that something is wrong. It is the natural result of your inner architecture reorganizing itself around a new center of gravity. Unity consciousness does not emerge from comfort. It emerges from the willingness to let old structures dissolve so that something truer can take their place. If you feel this shift happening inside you, if you sense that the person you once were is no longer the person you are becoming, then write these words in the comments. I am changing. One of the most immediate and often unsettling signs of this shift is the sudden intensification of your emotional life. You may find yourself moved to tears by music, by a stranger's kindness, by the sight of an elderly couple holding hands. You may feel the suffering of others as though it were your own. You may discover that you can no longer tolerate cruelty, dishonesty, or emotional manipulation in ways you once accepted as normal. This is not sentimentality. This is the heart becoming your primary center of perception. For most of your life, your mind has been the dominant force in how you navigate the world. It analyzes, categorizes, defends, and plans. It keeps you safe by maintaining emotional distance. But as unity consciousness begins to stabilize, the heart takes precedence. Empathy deepens. Compassion becomes reflexive rather than deliberate. You feel emotional truth before you think about it. This creates vulnerability, yes, but it also creates wisdom. You become capable of reading people and situations with an accuracy that logic alone cannot provide. You sense incongruence. You recognize authenticity. The cost of this sensitivity is that you can no longer numb yourself to the pain of the world. But the gift is that you also become capable of experiencing joy, connection, and love with a depth you have never known. This is not weakness entering your life. This is intelligence of a different order. Alongside heightened emotion, many people report an overwhelming and often unexplained fatigue during this transition. You may find yourself needing more rest than usual. You may feel drained after social interactions that once energized you. You may experience waves of exhaustion that have no clear medical cause. Before you dismiss this as illness or aging, understand what is actually occurring within your nervous system. For years, your body has operated in a state of low-grade hypervigilance. It has been scanning for threats, managing stress hormones, and keeping your defenses active even during rest. This mode of functioning requires enormous energy. As unity consciousness begins to emerge, your nervous system shifts toward coherence. It recalibrates. It moves away from constant activation and begins learning how to rest authentically. This recalibration is metabolically demanding. Your body is rewiring itself at a cellular level, and this process requires resources. Sleep, hydration, and stillness become essential supports during this time. However, I must also be clear, not all fatigue is spiritual. If your exhaustion is accompanied by other concerning symptoms, seek medical evaluation. True transformation does not ask you to bypass your physical health. What I am describing is the fatigue that appears alongside emotional sensitivity, shifts in perception, and a growing need for solitude. This is your body asking for space to integrate a profound change in how it relates to the world. As unity consciousness deepens, you will notice a subtle but unmistakable shift in how you relate to conflict. Drama that once captivated you now feels hollow. Competition that once motivated you now seems exhausting. Power struggles, gossip, and the need to defend your position begin to lose their appeal. You may find yourself withdrawing from conversations that thrive on division. You may feel increasingly unwilling to engage in arguments, even when you know you are right. This is not apathy. This is the natural consequence of the ego losing its dominance over your perception. The ego requires conflict to sustain itself. It needs enemies, adversaries, and challenges to prove its existence and value. It feeds on righteousness and the validation that comes from being correct. But in unity consciousness, the ego is no longer the center of your identity. You begin to see conflict not as a battlefield where you must win, but as a reflection of unmet needs and unhealed pain. This does not mean you become passive. It means you become discerning. You recognize which battles serve growth and which serve only distraction. You start prioritizing emotional safety over being right. Relationships that once felt normal may begin to feel draining because the dynamics no longer align with your internal state. You're not losing interest in people. You are losing tolerance for patterns that perpetuate separation. And as this happens, your presence becomes calmer, more grounded, and far more difficult to provoke. With the reduction of ego comes the rise of something quieter and far more reliable: inner knowing. You may notice that intuition, which once arrived sporadically, now speaks to you with increasing clarity. You sense things before they happen. You feel the truth of a situation without needing evidence. Time itself may begin to feel different. Hours pass like minutes when you are engaged, yet moments of stillness stretch into spaciousness. You crave solitude, not out of loneliness, but because silence has become a sanctuary where your awareness can settle and expand. One of the most profound shifts during this phase is the diminishing fear of death. This does not mean you become reckless. It means that the continuity of existence begins to feel emotionally real rather than intellectually believed. You sense that consciousness does not end with the body. You feel connected to something larger, something that persists beyond form. This realization brings both peace and disorientation. Peace, because the terror of annihilation fades. Disorientation, because you must now live with the awareness that most of the world still operates from survival fear. You are standing between two modes of perception, and this can feel isolating. But understand this: the intuition you are experiencing is not magical. It is the result of being fully present. When the mind is no longer consumed by past regrets and future anxieties, it becomes attuned to the present moment with extraordinary precision. This is where true guidance lives. If you are experiencing this awakening, I invite you to share one insight or struggle you are currently navigating. Write it in the comments below. Now we arrive at the practical question: how do we stabilize this awareness so that it does not overwhelm us? Heightened sensitivity without grounding becomes destabilizing. Intuition without discernment becomes confusion. I will share with you the practices that have allowed me to remain anchored while navigating expanded consciousness. First, emotional journaling. Not the journaling of events, but the journaling of sensations. Each day, I write what I feel in my body before I assign meaning to it. This practice trains me to observe emotion without being consumed by it. Second, breath awareness. I spend time each morning focusing solely on the rhythm of my breath. This simple act recalibrates my nervous system and reminds me that I am not my thoughts. Third, I limit my exposure to media stimulation. The constant flood of information, opinion, and manufactured urgency disrupts coherence. I choose silence over noise whenever possible. Nature has become one of my most essential tools. I walk slowly. I observe without labeling. I allow the rhythm of the natural world to regulate my internal state. These are not exotic practices. They are foundational habits that create the conditions for integration. Awareness that is not grounded becomes spiritual bypassing. Wisdom that is not embodied becomes philosophy without impact. If you want this shift to stabilize rather than destabilize, you must give it structure. You must meet expanded consciousness with disciplined presence. There is a danger in spiritual awakening that must be addressed directly. It is the temptation to make awareness itself into a new form of ego. You may begin to see yourself as more evolved than others. You may feel superior because you perceive unity, while those around you remain trapped in separation. You may distance yourself from responsibility, relationships, and daily structure under the guise of transcendence. This is not awakening. This is spiritual arrogance, disguised as enlightenment. Unity consciousness does not separate you from life. It deepens your engagement with it. You still pay your bills. You still honor your commitments. You still show up for the people who depend on you. The difference is that you do these things without the weight of resentment, without the need for recognition, and without the illusion that your worth is determined by outcomes. Humility becomes your foundation. You understand that awareness is a gift, not an achievement. You remain curious rather than certain. You stay open to correction. You recognize that every person you encounter is navigating their own version of this journey, and your role is not to awaken them, but to embody clarity in your own life. Relationships remain essential. Structure remains essential. Responsibility remains essential. These are not obstacles to unity consciousness. They are the fields in which unity consciousness is tested and refined. If your spirituality requires you to abandon the world, then it is not unity you have found. It is escape. True transformation allows you to live fully, love deeply, and act wisely, without losing yourself in the process. And so we arrive at the calm that follows the shift. When the transition is supported with grounded practices, emotional honesty, and humility, a profound stability begins to emerge. The intensity of the early stages subsides. Emotional sensitivity remains, but it no longer overwhelms you. Intuition becomes a steady guide rather than a confusing whisper. You find that you can engage with the world without being consumed by it. You can hold space for suffering without drowning in it. You can offer wisdom without needing to be right. This is not superiority. This is clarity. The fifth dimension is not a destination you arrive at and then remain in permanently. It is a way of being that you practice daily. Some days you will embody it fully. Other days you will slip back into old patterns of reactivity and fear. This is natural. Growth is not linear. What matters is that you return to awareness with patience and without judgment. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are integrating a profound shift in consciousness, and this process takes time. The signs you have been experiencing, the emotional depth, the fatigue, the withdrawal from conflict, the intuition, the changing relationship with time and death. These are not random. They are markers of transformation. They indicate that you are moving toward coherence, toward unity, toward a life rooted in presence rather than survival. Trust this process. Give it the support it needs. And remember, awakening is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more fully who you have always been beneath the noise. If this truth resonates with you, if you choose to walk this path with intention and courage, then write these words in the comments. I choose clarity and peace.